My mother was visiting New York City a few weeks ago, and as is her practice, she visited Fourth Universalist here on Sunday too. Although she isn't currently a member of a Unitarian Universalist congregation, she has been in the past and will sometimes stop into UU congregations when she is traveling or on the road. I will sometimes receive messages with comments on the sermons that she hears that she's seen, everything from fun to similar to yours, or things like curious, or worse, that can't be their head minister. When I was applying for congregational ministry positions 3 years ago, including this one, my mom was my sermon editor. When a minister applies to a congregation, you really just need 3 good sermons, and she helped with all of them. It helped that she was a professor, now retired, and although she taught film, she had graded her share of papers and applied for her share of grants. She knew good writing, but just as important, she knew good storytelling. She could look at a draft and see what worked and what didn't, offering suggestions and revisions. It must have worked because here I am. Even today, I will get emails and text messages from her with sermon ideas. She knows I am constantly on the lookout for good books to read, interesting ideas, good stories, and anecdotes. I've gotten messages with subject lines like an elephant book or a Taoist fable maybe I like, or the abolitionist vegan movement. I use a number of her finds throughout the years, and they are often very good. And when she visits, like she did a few weeks ago, we always get to talking about upcoming sermons. It seemed especially fitting this time because Mother's Day was coming up. As a non-mother and as a man, it isn't the easiest Sunday to preach on. Father's Day would be simpler. And so I asked her what she thought, as a mother, as a woman, what I should talk about. Her answer surprised me. She said that she'd been thinking a lot about, and all her female friends had been thinking a lot about how angry they were as women, all the time, about so many things. Now, if you have met my mom, and I know some of you have, she does not seem angry. She does not use angry language. She does not swear. She does not raise her voice or scowl or insult people or do any of the things that angry people often do. And yet she was telling me that she was angry. Thinking about her life, she reminded me that she had lots of things to be angry about. She grew up in a home with a family that was borderline, if benignly, negligent, and she was often the victim of a structure-free environment that allowed for intense sibling bullying. She has been the victim of violence from men and cruelty on more than one occasion, and lived through some of the darkest and most disturbing experiences that one could imagine. So much so that a mentor of mine once remembered reading about an incident that involved her in a paper 30 years before. All of these lived experiences rest on top of her being a woman, and also in being a woman in a society that does not and did not value the life of women. As a woman raised in the 1960s, she faced constant obstruction, doubts, and undermining of her pursuit of a career in the arts and film. Her brother was supposed to be the great artist, the one with the creative genius, and he was very, very good. But so was my mother, who was told that women did not do art. She got her first professor job at the University of South Dakota, where she was hired as the first and only woman on the arts faculty, thanks to a new law and a progressive dean that overruled the entirely male faculty, who did not want her or believe that she was qualified. When she arrived barely 30, She remembers being constantly belittled, interrupted, and made to feel small. They went out of their way to let her know she was not welcome and did not belong. I am proud of what my mom has done, of the life that she has lived. Despite all of the suffering that she has experienced, the injustice, the violence, the discrimination, she has lived what I think is a remarkable life. She has achieved great success, winning almost all the big awards an artist can win, with work showing all over the world, including MoMA and the Whitney. She's the kind of artist now, despite what people told her growing up, that when last year we went to visit the Guggenheim, staff came up and said, "Are you who we think you are?" Most admirably, though, as a feminist filmmaker, she has refused to accept a world where women are treated like non-people, having the courage to sit across from those sexist professors and to make explicitly feminist films. Her films were radical enough that Pat Robertson, the far-right television host, attacked her on air for being anti-man and anti-family. Conservatives on the Senate floor cited her work as a reason to defund the National Endowment for the Arts. They were right that my mom's films are edgy. They pushed the boundaries so much that I wasn't allowed to watch some of them, and only did because I fell into it by accident. They explore themes of male violence and brutality, but also softer things like female aging and the environment. What I didn't realize until talking with her, though, were just how much anger went into her work. It turns out that she has long felt unable to express her anger, that it felt to her socially unacceptable that women who express anger or even unpleasantness are deemed unreasonable, overly emotional, and dismissed. That in order to be respected and taken seriously, women must always be in control and pleasant and non-threatening. Men, by contrast, are held to a very different standard. For men, anger is almost a virtue, outrage. It is connected with righteousness and power and an admirable expression of certainty. Nor is this clearer than on our national stage, where angry male politicians and pundits and judges yell and shout and even cry, while the women across from them remain stoic and in control and clear-headed. This is obviously in no way a biological reality. Most reputable studies have shown that children are raised vastly differently depending on their gender, even when their parents try their very best to treat them equally. There's a story told by Soraya Kamali in her new book called Rage Becomes Her. She tells a story about her young daughter, and that almost every day in her preschool, there was a period of time when her daughter loved playing with blocks. She would make beautiful, elaborate structures out of these blocks, spending hours each day, maybe a budding architect. But almost every day, just as she would build up those little block structures and castles, a young boy in the preschool would come over and knock them down. He seemed to get a joy out of it, it seemed, and understandably, it really upset her child. She talked to the boy's parents about it, and they struggled to see what the problem was. He's just a boy. That's what they do. He can't help them himself. It's just a phase. As the boy's parents excused his behavior, Kamali's daughter did everything that she could do on her own to stop it. She stood in his way when he came near. She devised ways of building stronger and more resilient buildings to resist his carnage. She moved to other parts of the classroom that he didn't seem to go as much. And of course, predictably, it didn't work. The boy just kept behaving badly. even as she bended over backwards to accommodate him, as she tried everything she could, she just got angrier and angrier, and he kept on doing it. This is part of the problem. The girl was being trained, even in preschool, that there were right ways to respond and wrong ways to respond. If she had been a boy, I bet she would have been told to stick up for herself and shove that little punk the next time he came over to her blocks. At least she could have made a scene to show that she was not going to take it anymore. But even though she did everything right, she was nice, she was good, she de-escalated the conflict, the boy's needs were still put above her own. She was told that she needed to adapt to him, and that he needed to adapt to her. Her job was to keep the peace. Her job was to be the nice person, to control her behavior. And when she would tell, she was blamed for not being understanding enough, for causing conflict. Studies have shown that conflicts between men and women happen in very different ways. Women are most often angry because of the men's actions against them. But that's not often why men are most angry at women. Men, studies show, are most often angry at women because they are angry at the reactions of women against their actions. Whether it's our little boys or our national leaders, we create a world where the true outrage is about those accused of harm, rather than those who are actually harmed. Simple male discomfort is understood as untenable. Women's pain is acceptable. It's a world free of accountability for men and boys, where only one person's experience, anger, feelings, and discomfort matter. Nowhere is this most telling for me in an instance that happened in the process of developing the male contraceptive pill. After many trials, these new pills were ruled out for their negative side effects, including things like headaches, stomach aches, risk of depression, and acne outbreaks. Now, women who have taken contraceptives for women know that these are the side effects that women struggle with all the time. And yet they are on the market. Women are expected to take them without complaint. But when it came to men experiencing the same exact symptoms, they were deemed too much, out of hand, unacceptable. Over the course of one's life, these attitudes and these actions take a toll. They communicate to girls and women that they and their feelings and their needs and their pain are not important. And they communicate to boys and men that they can do anything they want. They will and deserve to be listened to. That their actions are not things that they have to worry about, because that's someone else's job. Women are allowed to be sad, perhaps, maybe upset, but not angry. Angry is discouraged in women, not because anger is immoral, but because it is powerful. As Chamali writes in reference to her daughter, anger is the first line of defense against injustice. Anger is what changes things. It upsets the status quo. It's what stops boys from harassing girls and men from harassing women. It's no surprise that in our patriarchal culture, anger is shamed in women, because to control a person's anger is to control them. It understands that women's anger, to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, is one letter short of danger. Because women, like my mom, have so much to be angry about, and they want to change the way things have always been done. There are a few areas in this world where women are allowed to be angry. Appropriately for today, one of them is as mothers, as protective nurturers of children. Our society expects This accepts this form of power and anger, in the same way it once accepted the power of women in the home. But this is a form of anger that is inherently limiting, not only because it is only available to women who are mothers, but because it is used to invalidate anger about everything that isn't that. If we are going to be a society that truly fights for justice, we have to honor the anger that women feel. My mother, both a victim of this oppression and a combatant against it, uses her work as a way to express the anger within her. I think it was for her a way to channel it in a way that society allowed, in a small and narrow way. We need that kind of anger. We need it from her. We need it from everyone. Not destructive, not hateful, not indignant, performative anger, but anger at being forced into a true experience of suffering, of injustice and discrimination. It's about accountability and right relationship. Because to dismiss a woman's anger, anyone's anger, is to dismiss them. There is no shame in feeling anger at injustice and discrimination. It is only a virtue. Virtue that we all need to be our fullest selves, to protect one another, ourselves, and those we love. If you find yourself in your life facing someone else's anger, who says that your actions are painful and unjust and hurtful, you should listen, and you should learn and take it seriously. It is a terrible privilege and cruelty to dismiss someone's anger. It communicates that you think nothing of them. And if you have anger, the kind of anger that comes from years of being told that you do not matter, that someone else's actions are beyond your control, yet they impact you every single day and hurt you. If that's the kind of anger that you have, let it out. That is the kind of anger that we need, that our daughters need, that our mothers need, to push back against those people that are bullies, either in preschools or on faculties or in any place in this world. We cannot make excuses anymore. This is not a just world that we live in, but anger can help make it one. May we open ourselves to it, in ourselves, in others, and be glad in it. Amen.